Hello and welcome to the Motherhood Village podcast. I am on with a very special guest. I have Katie Cassin, who is a mom. She's a wife. She's a photographer. She's a former actor. She's an eating disorder survivor, body positive advocate, a gentle parenting advocate on a mission to document the journey of womanhood through encouraging self-love. I love that. Welcome, Katie. How are you today?
Hi. Oh my gosh, you're saying that. And I'm like, is that me?
That is you. Yes. I always like to ask my listeners or my guests to tell me a book that they has made an impact on them or something that you feel like if a listener had to read a book that kind of changed you.
Well, I love to read, so that's hard to narrow down. I love to read tons of different genres. Right now, I'm currently in my romance novel. But if I had to recommend one, I love the book. It's called Girl Code. It's by the woman who runs the Champagne Diet. And it's literally just an ode to, she talks about limitless lux and how there's nothing but lux out there in the universe for everyone should they choose to grab it. So there's no such thing, as competition, that your success is just orbiting, and whether you choose to grab it is up to you. You're not taking from anyone and they're not taking from you. And I really enjoyed it.
I love that. Thank you. So before we jump into it, I want to preface this conversation because a lot of times on my podcast, I'll have an expert, an author. And when you and I connected and the thought of coming on the podcast came on, I was like, you know what? I'd love to share her story because I think there is still something to say about the everyday mom, the everyday woman, and that the podcast just doesn't have to be someone who's talking about a book or like going through an expert opinion on something, that you're a mom who's trying to make it, who's a business owner, trying to do this gentle parenting business in the day and age of the generational curses that, we have and trying to get rid of, the body positive advocate, you're a photographer. So I thought we'd have such an interesting conversation. So I want to preface that of why I felt compelled to have you on the podcast and share, as much as your story as you can in a high level way, but really tailoring it into that you are a photographer, right? And your mission of really, I love that, documenting the journey of womanhood, I think is beautiful. And I think it's a full circle moment considering the stuff you and I have talked about online and that I know of you, right? But I know we're not going to hit everything, but yeah, I'm excited to dive in. Okay. So you're a mom and you're a wife. The gentle parenting thing has come up. It's come up in the support groups. You went to your first one, and it does come up a lot. And I think there's some misconceptions of what gentle parenting is. And again, you're not an expert, but I want you to share how you integrate maybe some of those gentle parenting skills and the body positivity aspect into your family life and to your discussions with your son. And are there specific conversation or practices that you've done to kind of foster the self-love and acceptance?
Sure. First, I want to say I love that you're talking about like an everyday mom, because when I was younger, I used to have nightmares of being ordinary. I used to have nightmares of not doing something so monumentally groundbreaking. I didn't want to be ordinary, and it's so funny how much now I find the ordinary to be so extraordinary, and how I find the life and being responsible for a little life to be so pivotal and so extraordinary, when as a teenager and early 20s, I may not have thought that. I will say I consider gentle parenting. I like when people call it more mindful parenting, because it is just not at all gentle to me. It sometimes feels like warfare. But in terms of body positivity, that was always a really, really non-negotiable goal for me in becoming a parent, is to be able to confidently promote body positivity in my child. And a lot of that started before I even became a parent. I did go away to treatment for a few months for my eating disorder back in my early 20s. It's something that I never thought that I would have done. But my now husband and I, we were dating, things were getting more serious. And I remember having this thought, like, what would I feed my toddler? And I had no idea what a normal plate was supposed to look like. And it upset me so much that I was like, I wouldn't even know how to balance a plate for a child, let alone myself. And that's what really motivated me, the thought of one day being a mom. So that work started years beforehand, and the right therapists and the hard work and the healing and all of that stuff. I had to heal myself in order to be able to do that for my child. And I think that's anything in gentle parenting. I think the hardest part of gentle parenting is healing your traumas, healing your triggers, because there's no way you could parent mindfully without having made peace with the things that triggered you. Even, as it goes along, you find more things that you didn't know were problematic that are.
Love that. And I want to stop you right there, though, for one
Okay.
second, because you said two things that were so, I think, for anyone listening to this, and I'm always mindful. So, for one, I think what you really pointed out that I think is so poignant for anyone listening is that you were like, listen, I went through this, and like, how do I heal myself first? And I think that is the foundation of a lot of things. And actually, Dr. Becky, I just listened to her on a podcast, and she was like, everyone thinks this gentle parenting, the conscious parenting, mindful parenting, I think they all kind of go hand in hand. She was like, that's actually harder to pause and to not react. She was like, is harder than just giving in and doing what we've been taught to do over and over, as opposed to taking a pause back and say, okay, what is this trying to teach me? What is my son trying to say? How do I listen to this? She's like, that's actually harder than just not. So thank you for mentioning of like, if even just healing yourself, because yes, as our children get older, I think they more so than not show us a mirror of what we need to heal in ourselves. In going back to the body positivity with your son, and you have a son, right? Not a daughter, which I think kind of is something to say, because I don't think we talk about enough with how men and boys can have that same thing. So why don't you talk a little bit about that and how you feel in making sure you're modeling something that he can really take of self-love and acceptance, and how even your husband, like, have you had to bring in your husband to say, listen, we got to change the way we describe things, we got to change the way we talk about some of these things?
Yes, that's so funny you say that, because self-love is just not gender specific. Especially from being a performer for most of my life, it wasn't just women that had issues with their body. It's men too. The expectations and wants for them are different, but still, for women, they want you to be smaller. For men, they want you to be bigger. There's always, either way, you're meant to feel insufficient. And with my son, it started when he started going to solids and baby led weaning and stuff. I was really adamant about not adding any sort of value to any type of food. I wanted them all to have equal value. So if I gave him, broccoli and pasta, and, my family was visiting and there was a cookie on the table and he wanted the cookie, it all goes on the same plate. It all goes on the same plate. It's like, we don't have sweets, we don't have this, none of that. They all have their time and place. And now that he's older, of course, he hears different things like, this isn't healthy, you should eat something healthy. And I really try to, instead of saying box them into healthy and not healthy, it's, well, when we eat red food, that makes our heart healthy. When we eat orange food, we can see in the dark. When we eat yellow food, trying to assign purpose to food, but not value, if that makes sense.
I think that's so poignant as well. And actually, let's go back. So have you taken, from maybe talking to your own experts and the own amount of money that you've invested in therapy, and that I know you still invest in therapy, of saying that I've done the work? I know I talked to someone and I forget her name, but in the same realm of like the body positivity, she came from the aspect of being a girl mom, right? And showing it really with her daughters. But to your point, I think it's something to say. And what I've heard throughout all of my time and talking to the few people that I have about this body positivity and really having a great relationship with food is, to your point, saying what it can do and how we feel after eating, and not just the value on like, oh, the sweets are this, and like you get a treat after this. It's really like, well, how does our body feel after we eat it? And it sounds like you basically do this.
Yes. And my son is too smart for my own good, I would say. And he'll say, well, why can't I just have ice cream all the time? And I was like, he's really making me work for it today. I'll say things, well, chips and cookies, they give us really fast energy. So it's going to give us energy for a very short amount of time, but we have such a busy day today. Don't we need something that's going to give us long energy? What can we have with our cookie? What can we have with our ice cream that's going to give us even longer energy so that we can play all day? And I feel like structuring that conversation that way he's really not advertent to any sort of food, and he doesn't, to the other side, he doesn't just go somewhere and be like, well, I want ice cream. He's able to intuitively order something at a restaurant that he wants to order, not mom never lets me have this, I'm going to go nuts. So like sometimes he'll order a grilled cheese, sometimes he'll order chicken nuggets, sometimes he'll order he'll eat some of my vegetables. It doesn't matter because nothing's being kept from him. So I think it's on
Yes.
both sides, right? Like you don't want to restrict and you don't want to overload. It's finding that middle ground.
Yeah, and I think that ties in with the mindfulness of the parenting, right? There's a book I'm reading now, and my goal is to read a parenting book once a month for the rest of the year, because ideally I would love to bring those authors on the podcast. So I'm manifesting Dr. Shafali, but it's such a fantastic book, and it kind of goes hand in hand, the consciousness, the mindfulness. But that conversation you had with your son goes in with the gentle parenting and the mindfulness of it, because you could have easily been like, boy, because I said so, eat and like move on, right? But you're like, okay, like you said, he's making me work for it. And I think that's the hardest part about parenthood, as dads, as moms, of really being mindful and say, okay, do I really want to take this and foster something to where he can take it and really learn from it, as opposed to continuing to have this conversation with him every day, and I'm going to have to say because I said so, because I said so. Maybe we can nip this in the bud. I can pause for a second. And I loved that response, right, of like, how do we want to feel today after we eat this? Yeah, ice cream tastes good and that's fine, but we're going to have a busy day, so we need things to make us feel good and all the things. So I love that. But that goes hand in hand with the mindfulness of parenting, of pausing and saying, what do I want? Do I want him to learn from this or do I not?
Yes, I find that we're at the age of tummy aches where kids overeat and get tummy aches a lot because, Halloween, Easter, anything where there's a lot of candy. And I find that I never have that problem with my son, knock on wood. I find that I never have that problem because it's not like it must happen now or we can never have these jelly beans. Like it's not like that. If he asks for something, 9 times out of 10, I'll give it to him. It doesn't matter what time of day it is, doesn't matter, whatever. And if he always wants more, I'll be like, cool, just listen to your body, bud. And like he'll take a bite or something. So I'll be like, mommy, my belly's really full, or mommy, my belly's really hungry. And it could be inopportune times of the day, but I always honor it. I always let him know that I trust what he is feeling in his body and I will cater to whatever it is.
I love that. And actually, to go into the whole body positivity and self love, we know societal pressures and we know the healthy standards can make it very challenging, especially in the day and age with social media. I think I was telling you this when we had lunch, that I was like, I try not to have filters. I try and be like as raw and real as possible when I'm showing up in that space of never wanting someone to feel less than when they come to my space, because I am putting something out there that's not true to what it is. How do you navigate that as a photographer, and how do you overcome those obstacles even in yourself, of the things of your background and some of the stuff that you've dealt with, to promote the body positivity and self-love in your work, and then even continuing to work on it with yourself?
I think that I find them to be one and the same. I think being an artist, you're inspired by your real life. So it's really hard to separate the two. I think that my answers are equal for both. And I think that the misconception of body positivity and self love is that you have to be in love with yourself all the time. That's not the case. What I like to call is I'm calling for a ceasefire. That's what I'm calling for, which is to stop being at war with yourself because it is exhausting. And you know, trigger warning, as I am physical proof that it saved my life. I wouldn't be here had I not found love for myself and my soul and what's inside. And it doesn't mean I don't have hard body image days. It doesn't mean, just like any disease, it is part of your life and you find your ways to healthily live with and navigate it. But you keep fighting and you stop giving yourself reason to hate yourself. That's what I'm asking for, especially, shooting boudoir is so rewarding for me. The mission to have women see what I see in them, what others see in them, right? Because words aren't always enough. We can sit here all day and say, you should love yourself and you should, and all of those great things, but there's a special power that comes with showing someone the back of the camera and they're like, whoa, that's me. And that fills my cup every single time. I feel like I will be chasing that high for the rest of my life because
I Go ahead.
I'm
Go
so
ahead.
sorry. No, because
No, go.
I'm not asking you to blindly love yourself no matter what, as much as I would love to do that, I'm asking you to stop fighting against the grain so hard. I'm asking you to stop being at war with yourself, and how much time and value would be added to your life should you choose to stop battling all the time with yourself.
I love that. And I think that's something that we don't say often enough. I want to say early on in my podcast, I brought this woman on. I want to say she's a life coach. And I take nuggets from every conversation I've had. I say like this has been like my own therapy 5 years in. But one of the things she said in talking about how she works with her clients is like life is ebbs and flows. And I think we have this misconception that we always have to be happy. And when we're low without understanding that that is a part of life. The expectation that we put on ourselves to think we always have to be here is just like unrealistic. We're going to have moments where we're up and down. So to your point, it's not saying, oh, yes, I'm finally in a place of loving myself, because truthfully, I think we all battle with some degree of like, we wish we could change this and the grass is greener and having all of this. But to your point, if we're focusing on ourselves and just saying that we are enough and understanding that we're going to have those moments of some days we're going to be here, some days we're not going to be here. But I would imagine it's recognizing when we are here, how long we're there, but then to pick ourselves up to know that it's part of it. We're not getting hard on ourselves. Like we understand, just as I would tell my son, anger is a part of the process, frustration, overwhelm. We may not feel our best today, and whatever the process is, but to know that that is normal and it's okay to feel like that. It's
It's
just
the human
how you kind
experience.
of go ahead,
It,
speak,
it
go ahead.
it's the human experience. I mean, we're not looking to avoid, it's the same thing. I think about it with parenting. When if my son is throwing a tantrum, my goal isn't to get the tantrum to stop. My goal is to teach him how to navigate those feelings and normalize those feelings, because as much as we would love to, we can't stop pain from happening. We can't stop life from lifing, you know. But what we can do is give them a solid foundation and groundwork to how to deal with things when they inevitably come up. And I feel like it's the same thing in parenting as it would be to us as adults. Is we can't stop bad body image days. We can't stop, you know, the second our favorite jeans are a little tight, right? Like we can't stop that from happening, but we can work on our skill set to how we cope with those things.
I had another person that told me that was like trauma is always there. I think we have this misconception that trauma, like when you talk about your trauma, we all have trauma. Some they were like, you have a pulse, you've had trauma. Maybe some are harder degrees or affected in different ways than others, right? But it's kind of all there in some way. And she's like, but I think we have this again misconception that when we go to a doctor, like it's going to be healed. And she's like, no, your trauma is always there. You just understand how to cope better with it. You understand when you're triggered more. You understand when your trauma does come up and you're like a little bit more, whoa, it's giving you the tools. And I love how you said that with the tantrum, because truthfully, kids are supposed to give tantrums because they don't know how to regulate. They haven't been taught yet. So to expect a child to like not get angry or not throw a tantrum, it's impossible because they've never been taught how to not do that, right? But again, society, we see, then we're triggered. Oh my God, they can't be out of control because goodness gracious, then that reflects on us. It's so much correlation there. But I want to take it to your photography because you said something before that you were like, you're kind of on that mission and you want to empower women to feel to have that right to say that's me. How have those? Well, it'll be two part. One, if you could share a story of a woman that was maybe like no, and then she did it and it was like life changing for her. And then how have those experiences influenced your perspective on womanhood in general?
Yeah, it would be so hard to pick one story. I feel like it's a turning point for wherever you're at: postpartum, post divorce, post health issues, post breakup, post engagement. And there's so many moments in life where women have come looking for that boost, looking to remember who they are, remember their self worth, step into their own body, step into their own sensuality, their power, all of that stuff. It runs the gamut. I mean, I don't think I've had one person walk through this door who, because you're in my studio today, but I haven't had one person walk through this door like, I'm just here because I'm here. That's There's always a reason. They're always looking for something. And I think as women, especially moms, lose places where they can find validation in themselves. I mean, how often do you throw yourself to the wayside for your husband, for your partner, for your child, right? And we do it without question. And I love to be the person that's like, well, why are you questioning doing it for yourself? Why are you the exception? Because you're not. You're special, but you're not the exception, right? Every woman deserves to have their body celebrated at any point in life. The last month in the studio has been all women celebrating their 40th birthdays. That just so happens to be the month I'm having. Last month it was all brides. This month it's all women in their 40s. And there is always time to step back into your power. There's always time to reconnect with yourself. You're never going to regret investing in yourself. You're just not.
Then once you become a mom, it trickles down to, and once you invest in yourself, what it trickles down to your son, your partner, your family, your friends. Going back to the second part of that question, what have you taken from each of those photo shoots? Like, what do you take from it? And if there's something you can sum it up now that you've been doing this, and I know the boudoir photos, and there's certain things that you really am passionate about taking, of like women just celebrating their womanhood in all aspects. What have you been taking from that? Like, how has that really filled your cup?
For so many reasons. One, because I know so extremely on the other side what it felt like to think I wasn't worth space on this earth because of what I looked like. And I see that pressure, not maybe to that extent in women. I see it in their eyes. I see it in the way they talk about themselves. I have all my clients fill out questionnaires so I can learn more about them, and really personalize their experiences. And selfishly for me, it just proves that we're just not alone. Like, we could be sitting for coffee and I'm thinking, oh my God, Nicole has the most flawless skin. Her skin is just always so beautiful. And like, we're sitting at lunch and I'm like, why is she just so gorgeous? Why am I not this way? Why am I not? No, because Nicole's sitting there going like, oh my God, my skin's acting up. Like, there's no, whoever you're looking at, whoever you admire, right? They're sitting there thinking of reasons to not admire themselves. There's never grass is always greener. There's always that difficulty, especially in women, that we're always thinking of how we can do better, how we can look better, we can impress better. And it's like, there's never any space for you're perfect just the way you are. You deserve to take up space just the way you are. You deserve to be anywhere. You don't owe people flattering. You don't owe people, mascara. You don't owe anybody anything. Your value and your space on this earth is based on your soul and who you are as a person. It has nothing to do with anything else, right? And I think it's just that reminder, and it motivates me to share that message with more women, but also selfishly reminds me that it's not just me. We all are in the same boat together.
Yeah, I think so. I think someone else I had heard the quote that said her mother had told her when she was growing up, honey, you're worried about you, but the next person is worried about them. Like, no one's really worried about you. Like, we're always like, it's about us. Like, our egos are so big, like, oh, they must be thinking about this and I have this. And when it's like, no, like, take your ego aside. No one really cares but you, in the sense of, to your
Yes.
point of making that thing where we're having conversation, oh, they must, my outfit and this. And it's like, no, everyone's got their own stuff that they're working on and dealing with. And yes, absolutely, where you can, they say no one's, the hair color, and it's like, oh, I love your curly hair. I wish I had straight hair. I love your this hair. And you're like, listen, no one is. But to your point, I think celebrating the photography of it and looking at how, like, wow, I'm sure like you have women all ages, all colors, all things, and how impactful, empowering is, number one, to see that we all kind of do struggle in some way. No one is exempt from it. And number two, of when they do see it, that they're like, oh, wow, like, I can look like I am a badass, like you said,
Yeah, we
and
do
that's
a whole
awesome.
with boudoir. We do have a whole reveal experience here. So they come back a week or two later, and
Love
I put
it.
everything on the TV, and we have snacks and drinks and candles and all that stuff because I'm a Cancer at heart and must nurture anyone who walks within 3 feet of me. And I really think in all these years of photography, people don't realize that you correlate your experience when you see that image. Think about when you see your kid at one, smashing their cake, like, you're going to remember how you felt when those pictures were taken, right? And more than anything, I'm about curating your experience here. I tell all my clients, cool, if you're making an album for your significant other, whatever, like, they just won the lottery, that's great. I personally don't care what they think. I couldn't care less. I think that's great. I think that it's their honor to have anything that you decide to share with them. My priority is your experience. When you walk in this room, what it means to you. And when you look back on these pictures, how you remember feeling. And I want that to empower you going forward. So that's of utmost importance to me.
I love that. So share with my listeners how they can connect with you. I know we talked about boudoir, but talk about all the different services that you provide. You are in the South Florida area. So for anyone listening, Katie is in South Florida. I know I have quite a few people that listen from the South Florida area, or maybe you're in another state and you want to come in. Hey, and you're on vacation, get your photo taken. But yes, so talk about all the different ways that families can work with you, that women can connect with you, men, all the things.
Yes. So yes, I'm all about womanhood. So whether it's your womanhood journey involves motherhood, whether it involves entrepreneurship, whether it involves self-love, I'm your girl. So I am in the South Florida area. I do shoot up to New York twice a year to offer sessions as well. So you can find me. I'm most active on Instagram. So you'd find me at Katie Cassin Photography. That's where I'm most active, but also my website is the same thing, katiecassinphotography.com. And yeah, that's where you would find me.
I'll put in the show notes. Before we part ways here, I wanted to ask because I know we can have a whole conversation more about the body positivity. And I know you and I have had, you and I are both very open book, very vulnerable of like, listen, this is who I am, take it as it is. I mean, that's kind of how I've always been. And I think it's probably also why people share things with you and why people share things with me, right? Because you could feel the energy exchange, like there's no judgment. We are here. But before we part ways here, I want you to share like your final thoughts that if someone was listening to this episode and they had to take something or one to two things away, what would that be? And you can share it in two aspects. You can share it on the parenting side of things. I think you shared enough of like what it takes to really like at the end of the day, it comes to connection with our children. If it comes to connection and truly being the change that we wish to see in our children, of really modeling whatever it is that we're asking of our children. So share that though, like a final thought on the parenting side, and truly a final thought that if there's a woman listening to this that might be kind of having a bad day or kind of going through her own wake of things, what you'd want to impart on her listening.
Oh my gosh. Parenting wise, I would say to be being gentle with yourself is in turn being gentle with your child. I think children take in more of what they see than what they hear. And I think that if I could, sum it up, the kindness you give to yourself is in turn the kindness you're giving to your child because that's how they're going to learn how to love themselves. So just to always be aware of that you deserve as much love as your child does, in your opinion. So to treat yourself that way. And then big picture, if anyone could take anything from this, I would just encourage, a ceasefire. Think about how much of your life and your day you would get back if you weren't at war with yourself all day long, because you're missing it. You're missing it all by just worrying over how this top falls. And if you have a muffin top and if you have just, gosh, you would trust me, you would live so much more life if you stopped being at war with yourself so much.
I love that. And I'll also put in the show notes like some resources, right? If you would even share
Um,
with me of some
Absolutely.
organizations or things that have helped, because that's definitely something I'll preface with this episode. But thank you, Katie. Thank you for so much for coming on, for sharing a bit you know, of your experience, right? Because I think it takes bravery to say like I've struggled with this and this is kind of what I've gone through, right? But I'm trying to change the perspective of people have when they come to beauty standards, right? And really empowering women to love their full self in whatever stage that is. So thank you for sharing that. Thank you for the work that you do. And yeah, I'm a big fan. I cannot wait. I know at some point I'm going to do boudoir with you. All the things. I know it. I feel everything takes the right time, but I will be there at some point. And
I
yeah,
can't
thank
wait.
you and continued
Excited.
blessings. I know, and continued blessings to you. Well, I put it on here, right? So it has to happen. Like we're going to do this,
Yes.
and just continued
Listen,
blessings
I
to
was
you
going to peer
for.
pressure you, but if you're peer pressuring yourself, that's even better.
Yes, because I told you I did one years ago, and I made a
Yes.
book for my husband, and it's somewhere in his dresser. So this time I wouldn't necessarily do it with the intent of being it for him, right? Because that also can put to talk quickly about that. That actually did was like, well, did he not like it? Right? Like there's something to say with the expectation of like, did he not like it? Like to I thought I did all these different poses and all, and it was beautiful. it's in a desk somewhere. Like he didn't even think about it. Like I hope my son never I mean, it's nothing crazy, but like to be like, Mom, what are you doing? You know? So I think there is something to say to doing it for yourself. And then anything that comes after that is a plus. So I love that that is the mind frame because again, right? Then that is a problem. Like, oh, he didn't like it because he hasn't stared at it because I want him to look at it every day.
And my answer is, who cares? I
That's
could
my
care
whole
less
point, right? Like
anything.
who cares?
I do emphasize a lot of wall art because I want you to put up this gorgeous visible portrait in your master bathroom. So when you're getting ready in the morning, you're like, I am a bad bitch. Was I always
I
this?
love that.
You know, that's more my
Mhm.
concern than anything. I don't want your pictures in a drawer. Look at you. You don't belong in a drawer. No, no,
But there is
ma'am.
something to say. No, I love that. And this is why I love your mission of having women to really start from the self part of doing this for them as opposed for the outside vindication, the outside value, right? And it's really more intrinsic instead of the extrinsic motivation and all the things, right? So I love that. So continue to do what you do. I will continue to spread your message far and wide. Now we have, right? It's solidified in this. So
Yes.
thank you, Katie, and continued blessings to you for love and light. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.